The bullet that shattered the window of the stagecoach missed Sophia Turner's head by less than 3 inches. And in that crystalline moment of terror, she understood that her grand adventure to document the American frontier had become something far more dangerous than she had ever imagined. The year was 1878, and Sophia had traveled from Boston to the Nebraska Territory with nothing but her notebooks, her father's old camera equipment, and an unshakable determination to make her name as a serious journalist in a world that barely acknowledged women could hold a pen, let alone wield one with authority. The Boston Herald had dismissed her proposal for a series on Western expansion. The Tribune had laughed outright, but the smaller, independent press, desperate for content and willing to take risks, had given her a chance. 3 months to travel west, document the reality of frontier life, and return with stories that would captivate their readers. Now, as the stagecoach lurched violently to one side and the driver screamed something unintelligible over the thunder of hooves and gunfire, Sophia clutched her leather satchel to her chest and wondered if she would live long enough to write a single word. The coach tilted dangerously as the horses panicked. Another shot rang out, and this time she heard a sickening thud followed by the driver's cry. The reins must have gone slack, because suddenly the horses were running wild, the coach careening across the rough Nebraska terrain with no guidance whatsoever. Sophia was thrown against the side panel, her shoulder hitting the wood hard enough to knock the breath from her lungs. Through the broken window, she caught glimpses of the landscape rushing past in a blur of browns and yellows. The Badlands stretched endlessly in every direction, a maze of rocky outcroppings and dried creek beds that seemed to swallow the horizon. She had been told to wait for the regular stage to Valentine, Nebraska, but impatience and a tip about a story in a smaller settlement had sent her on this ill-fated journey instead. The coach hit something, maybe a rock or a rut, and suddenly, Sophia was airborne. She had one terrible moment to realize the coach was tipping over, and then the world became a chaos of splintering wood, flying luggage, and her own breathless scream. When the motion finally stopped, Sophia lay very still, taking inventory of her body. Pain radiated from her left side, and her head throbbed where it had connected with something hard. But she could move her fingers, her toes. Nothing seemed broken. Around her, the remains of the stagecoach creaked and settled. The horses had apparently broken free and fled. She could hear their hoofbeats fading into the distance. Silence descended, broken only by the wind whistling through the rocks and the pounding of her own heart. Sophia struggled to free herself from the tangle of her skirts and the debris. Her traveling dress, a sensible gray wool she had chosen specifically for durability, was torn at the sleeve. One of her boots had come partially unlaced, but her satchel was still there, the strap wrapped around her wrist. She pulled it close and carefully extracted herself from the wreckage. Outside, the Nebraska sun beat down with relentless intensity. It was late September, but the heat showed no signs of autumn mercy. Sophia shaded her eyes and looked around. The landscape was utterly foreign to her eastern sensibilities. Ridges of striated rock rose in the distance, painted in shades of tan, rust, and faded pink. Sparse vegetation clung to life in defiant patches. There was no road, no trail she could discern, nothing that indicated which direction led to civilization. The driver lay nearby, and Sophia forced herself to check on him despite the churning in her stomach. He was dead, a bullet wound in his back and his neck twisted at an unnatural angle from the crash. She had never seen a dead body before, and she turned away quickly, pressing her hand to her mouth. The bandits who had attacked them were gone. Perhaps they had assumed everyone in the coach had perished, or perhaps they had simply lost interest when the horses bolted in the wrong direction. Either way, Sophia was alone in the Badlands with no horse, no water beyond the single canteen she found in the wreckage, and no clear idea of how to survive. She stood there for a moment, letting the reality of her situation sink in. Then she opened her satchel and pulled out one of her notebooks and a pencil. Her hands were shaking, but she wrote anyway. If she was going to die out here, at least there would be a record. She documented the attack, the crash, the driver's death. She described the landscape with as much detail as she could manage. It was what she knew how to do, and doing it helped calm the panic that threatened to overwhelm her. When she finished writing, Sophia forced herself to think practically. She needed to find water, shelter, and help in that order. The sun was past its zenith, which meant it was afternoon. She had perhaps 4 or 5 hours until dark. She gathered what supplies she could from the wreckage. The canteen, a wool blanket, some hardtack from the driver's bag, and miraculously her camera equipment, battered but intact. She fashioned a bundle she could carry and studied the landscape. There were clouds on one horizon, dark and promising rain. But they were far away, and she had no idea if walking toward them was wise. In the other direction, she thought she could see what might be a line of vegetation, suggesting water. She chose that direction and started walking. The first hour was not too terrible. The second hour brought blisters. By the third hour, Sophia's lips were cracked, her throat was raw, and she had rationed the canteen down to a few precious sips. The vegetation she had seen turned out to be much farther than she had estimated, and when she finally reached it, she found only a dry creek bed lined with dead grass and withered bushes. She sat down on a rock and allowed herself 2 sips of water. The sun was lower now, turning the sky shades of orange and gold. Beautiful if she had been in any state to appreciate it. Instead, she felt fear settling into her bones. She had no idea where she was. No one knew where she was. The stage company would not report her missing for days. And even then, who would search this vast emptiness? Sophia thought of her mother back in Boston, probably sitting in the parlor with her needlework. Her father had been dead for 5 years, taken by pneumonia, and her mother had never understood Sophia's restlessness. A woman needs a husband and a home, she always said, not notebooks and wild ideas. Sophia had tried to explain that she needed more, that she had things to say and stories to tell, but her mother would just shake her head sadly. Well, mother, Sophia thought grimly, perhaps you were right after all. Perhaps I should have accepted Richard's proposal and resigned myself to a comfortable life of tea parties and charitable committees. But even now, facing the very real possibility of death, she could not quite make herself believe it. There was a whole world out here, stories that needed telling, voices that needed hearing. She had barely begun. A sound made her look up sharply. It was distant but distinct, a horse whinnying. Sophia stood, her heart suddenly pounding with hope. She scanned the landscape and saw nothing at first. Then, emerging from behind a rise of rock, came a rider on a black and white paint horse. For a moment, Sophia's hope wavered. What if this was one of the bandits returning? What if she had survived the crash only to meet a worse fate? But she was in no position to be choosy. She stood on her rock and waved her arms, calling out. The rider changed direction immediately, spurring the horse into a faster pace. As he drew closer, Sophia could make out more details. He was a tall man, broad-shouldered, wearing a dusty brown hat and a red bandana around his neck. A rifle was strapped to his saddle, and she could see the glint of a revolver at his hip. His face was shadowed by the brim of his hat, but she got an impression of dark hair and sun-bronzed skin. He pulled up a few yards away, and Sophia felt his eyes assessing her with the same wariness she felt toward him. Then he dismounted in one smooth motion and approached on foot, leading his horse. "Miss," he said, his voice a low drawl that marked him as a man who had spent his life under open skies. "You look like you have had some trouble." Now that he was closer, Sophia could see his face clearly. He was perhaps in his mid-20s, with strong features and dark brown eyes that held both caution and genuine concern. A few days' worth of stubble shadowed his jaw, and there was a scar cutting through his left eyebrow. He was, she realized with the detached portion of her mind that still functioned as a journalist, exactly what she had imagined a Western cowboy would look like. "There was an attack," Sophia said, and was dismayed to hear her voice crack. "Bandits shot at our stagecoach. The driver is dead. The horses ran off. I have been walking for hours." The cowboy's expression hardened. "How long ago?" "This afternoon." 3 or 4 hours, maybe," he nodded slowly, processing this information. "You are not hurt, bruised, nothing serious." Sophia straightened her shoulders, trying to project a competence she did not feel. "I am trying to reach Valentine. I was told it was the nearest town." "Valentine is 30 miles northeast of here," the cowboy said, and Sophia's heart sank. "You were walking west." Of course she was. She felt tears prick at her eyes and blinked them back furiously. She would not cry in front of this stranger. The cowboy must have seen something in her face because his expression softened slightly. "Name is Lucas Steele," he said. "I have been tracking strays from the ranch where I work. Looks like I found something different instead." "Sophia Turner," she managed. "I am a journalist from Boston." Lucas's eyebrows rose slightly. "Long way from home." "Yes." He studied her for another moment, then seemed to come to a decision. "Well, Miss Turner, we are losing daylight." "Can you ride?" "Not well," Sophia admitted. "But I can manage. Good enough." Lucas turned to his horse and began adjusting the saddle. "We will ride double until we can make camp. Cannot travel in the dark through this terrain, not safely. Come morning, I will get you to Valentine." Relief flooded through Sophia so intensely that her knees nearly buckled. "Thank you," she said. "I do not know what I would have done if you had not found me." Lucas glanced at her, and for the first time she saw the hint of a smile. "Probably something stubborn and determined, if I am guessing right. Boston journalist alone in the Badlands takes a certain kind of stubborn, or a certain kind of foolish," Sophia said ruefully. "Maybe some of both." He finished with the saddle and held out his hand. "Come on. We need to find a spot to camp before the sun goes all the way down." Sophia took his hand, noting the calluses and the strength in his grip as he helped her mount. He swung up behind her with easy grace, and she found herself acutely aware of his presence, the solid warmth of him at her back. It was deeply improper, riding like this with a man she had just met, pressed against each other. But propriety seemed like a distant concern from another world, one far away from this harsh, beautiful land where survival trumped etiquette. Lucas guided the horse with one hand, the other resting lightly at Sophia's waist to steady her. They rode in silence for a while, navigating between rock formations and across dusty flats. Sophia watched the landscape change colors as the sun continued its descent. And despite everything, she felt a stirring of the wonder that had brought her west in the first place. There was something magnificent about this land, something that made her understand why people would brave such hardship to make a life here. "There," Lucas said finally, pointing to an outcropping of rock that formed a natural shelter. "That will do." He dismounted first, then helped Sophia down. Her legs were unsteady after the hours of walking followed by riding, and she swayed. Lucas caught her elbow, steadying her. "Take a minute," he said. "I will get camp set up." Sophia watched as Lucas moved with efficient purpose, unsaddling his horse and hobbling it where it could reach some sparse grass. He gathered dead wood and dried sage for a fire, arranged rocks in a circle, and had flames crackling within minutes. The competence with which he performed these tasks was mesmerizing. Here was someone completely at home in this environment, moving through tasks that would have baffled Sophia without a moment's hesitation. "Sit," Lucas said, gesturing to a spot near the fire. "You must be exhausted." Sophia sank down gratefully, holding her hands out to the warmth. The temperature was dropping rapidly now that the sun was nearly gone. Lucas pulled supplies from his saddlebags: jerky, hardtack, a tin of beans. Not a feast by any measure, but Sophia's stomach growled eagerly. "It is not much," Lucas said, setting a pan on the fire to heat the beans, "but it will keep you going." "It is more than I had," Sophia said. "Thank you, Mr. Steele." "Lucas," he said, "no need for formality out here." "Then you should call me Sophia." He nodded, stirring the beans. In the firelight, his features were cast in sharp relief, all angles and shadows. Sophia found herself studying him with a journalist's eye, noting details. The careful way he moved, economical and precise. The alertness in his posture, even as he performed mundane tasks. The way his eyes constantly scanned their surroundings, watching for threats. This was a man accustomed to danger, to taking care of himself and others. "What brings a Boston journalist to Nebraska?" Lucas asked, handing her a tin plate with beans and a piece of jerky. Sophia accepted it gratefully. "I am writing a series of articles about the frontier. The real frontier, not the romanticized version people back east read about in dime novels. I want to tell the truth about what life is like out here." "The truth," Lucas repeated, something unreadable in his voice. "People back east want to hear the truth." "Some do," Sophia said. "Or at least I hope they do. There are so many stories here. The people building new lives, the challenges they face, the injustices too. Native peoples being pushed off their lands, laborers being exploited. I want to document all of it." Lucas was quiet for a moment, eating his own portion. Then he said, "That is ambitious, also dangerous. Not everyone wants those stories told." "So I am discovering," Sophia said dryly, touching her bruised shoulder. "Those bandits today," Lucas said, his voice taking on a harder edge. "They have been hitting stages in this area for the past 2 months. Sheriff cannot seem to catch them. Some folks think they are getting tipped off about which stages carry payroll or valuables. The driver today said something before we left the last way station," Sophia recalled. "Something about not carrying anything worth stealing. He seemed worried. Should have been. These men do not always check before they shoot." Lucas poked at the fire with a stick, sending sparks spiraling upward. "You were lucky." "I am aware," Sophia said quietly. They ate in companionable silence, and Sophia felt some of her strength returning with the food. After they finished, Lucas produced a battered coffee pot and set about making coffee, the aroma filling the night air and making Sophia almost weak with gratitude. "So you work on a ranch?" she asked, wanting to break the silence. "The Double R Ranch, about 10 miles south of Valentine," Lucas said. "Run by Robert Randall and his sons. I have been there about 3 years now. Good outfit, fair wages." "And before that," Lucas glanced at her, a slight smile playing at his lips. "You really are a journalist, are not you? Always asking questions." Sophia felt herself flush. "Sorry, occupational hazard. No need to apologize. Before the Double R, I drifted mostly. Worked ranches in Texas, Kansas, Colorado. Did some work as a scout for the cavalry for a while, but that got complicated." His expression darkened slightly. "Did not always agree with what I was asked to do." Sophia heard the weight behind those words and understood. The cavalry's treatment of native populations was brutal, a fact conveniently overlooked in most Eastern accounts. "That must have been difficult," she said carefully. "It was," Lucas said simply. He poured coffee into 2 tin cups and handed her one. "What about you? What makes a woman from Boston decide to come out here alone?" Sophia wrapped her hands around the cup, savoring the warmth. "My father was a journalist. He always said that a good story was worth the risk of finding it. He died before he could teach me much, but I remember watching him work, seeing how much he cared about getting things right. After he was gone, I wanted to follow in his footsteps. But newspapers back east do not take women seriously. They want us to write about fashion and society gossip, not real news." "So you came west," Lucas said. "So I came west," Sophia agreed. "I thought if I could bring back stories no one else was telling, stories that mattered, they would have to take me seriously." "Brave," Lucas said. "Also maybe a bit reckless." "I am starting to see that," Sophia admitted. She looked up at the sky, now fully dark and blazing with more stars than she had ever imagined existed. "But look at this. Look at where I am. How many people back home ever see something like this?" Lucas followed her gaze upward. "Fair point. The sky is something else out here." They sat watching the stars for a while, sipping their coffee. Sophia felt herself relaxing despite the strangeness of the situation. There was something solid and reassuring about Lucas's presence. He had not questioned her purpose or suggested she should not be here. He had simply helped her, competently and without fuss. "You should sleep," Lucas said eventually. "I will keep watch." "You need to sleep too," Sophia protested. "I will catch some rest later. Right now you need it more than I do." He pulled a bedroll from his pack and spread it out near the fire. "Take this." "But what about you?" "I have my saddle blanket. I have slept on worse." "Do not argue, Sophia. You have been through hell today." She wanted to protest further, but exhaustion was crashing over her in waves now that she had food in her stomach and warmth from the fire. She lay down on the bedroll, pulling her own blanket over herself. The ground was hard and the situation surreal, but she felt safe in a way she had not since the attack. "Lucas," she said into the darkness. "Yeah, thank you for everything. Get some sleep, Boston." Sophia smiled at the nickname and closed her eyes. She expected to lie awake, her mind spinning with the events of the day, but instead she fell into sleep almost instantly, lulled by the crackle of the fire and the quiet sounds of Lucas moving around the camp. She woke once in the night, disoriented and cold. The fire had burned down to embers. She could see Lucas sitting nearby, his rifle across his knees, silhouetted against the star-filled sky. He was humming something soft and low, a tune she did not recognize. She watched him for a moment, this stranger who had appeared when she needed help most, and felt something shift in her chest. Then sleep claimed her again. When she woke the second time, dawn was breaking in shades of pink and gold. Lucas was building up the fire again, and the smell of coffee was already perfuming the air. Sophia sat up, wincing at the stiffness in her muscles. "Morning," Lucas said. "How did you sleep?" "Better than I expected," Sophia admitted. "Did you sleep at all? Enough?" He handed her a cup of coffee and some hardtack. "We should head out soon. I want to get you to Valentine before noon." Sophia nodded, working through her morning routine as best she could without any of the usual amenities. She braided her hair and pinned it up, brushed the dust from her dress, and tried to make herself presentable. When she looked up, she caught Lucas watching her with an expression she could not quite read. "Ready?" he asked. "Ready." They broke camp efficiently, Lucas teaching Sophia how to help as they worked. He showed her how to pack the bedroll properly, how to distribute weight in the saddlebags. Sophia committed it all to memory. both for practical purposes, and because it was exactly the kind of detail her articles needed. Riding was easier this morning. Sophia was more relaxed, and Lucas seemed more comfortable as well. They talked as they traveled, Lucas pointing out features of the landscape and Sophia asking endless questions. She learned about the different types of rock formations, how to read signs of water, which plants were edible and which were poisonous. Lucas was a patient teacher, and Sophia filled pages of her notebook with observations. "You really do write down everything," Lucas observed, watching her scribble notes while they paused to rest the horse. "Details matter," Sophia said. "The texture of the rock, the way the light hits the landscape, the specific plants that grow here. These things tell a story about the land and the people who live on it." "Never thought of it that way," Lucas admitted. He leaned against a rock, his hat tipped back, and Sophia found herself thinking that he would make an excellent subject for a photograph. She almost asked, then decided it might be presumptuous. As if reading her mind, Lucas nodded toward her camera equipment. "That thing work? It should. I need to check if anything was damaged in the crash, but the case is sturdy. Maybe you should take some pictures while we ride, prove you were really out here." "Would you mind if I photographed you?" Sophia asked. "It would be good to have a human element in the images." Lucas looked uncomfortable. "I am not much for pictures, please. You are part of the story now, the cowboy who rescued the lost journalist." He laughed at that, a genuine sound that transformed his face. "When you put it like that, how can I refuse? But make it quick. We still have ground to cover." Sophia set up her camera with trembling fingers, both from excitement and nervousness. She had Lucas position himself with his horse, the Badlands stretching out behind them. Through the viewfinder, she framed the shot carefully. Man and animal against the vast landscape, a portrait of frontier resilience. "Stay still," she instructed and triggered the shutter. When it was done, Lucas helped her pack the equipment back up. "You really love this, do not you?" he said. "The writing, the photographs, all of it." "I do," Sophia said simply. "It is the only thing I have ever been certain about." Something in Lucas's expression shifted, became more thoughtful. "Must be nice having that certainty, knowing what you are meant to do." "You do not know what you are meant to do." He was quiet for a moment, adjusting the saddle. "I know what I am good at. Handling horses, working cattle, surviving out here. But I do not know if that is the same as knowing your purpose." "Maybe purpose is something we create, not something we find," Sophia suggested. Lucas smiled. "That is very philosophical for this early in the morning. Sorry, I tend to overthink things. Do not apologize, I like it." He paused, as if surprised by his own words, then gestured to the horse. "Come on, Boston. Let us get you to civilization." They rode on, the morning sun climbing higher and the air growing warmer. Sophia found herself acutely aware of every point of contact between her and Lucas. His arm around her waist, the solid presence of his chest against her back, the way their bodies moved together with the rhythm of the horse. It was intimate in a way that made her heart beat faster, though she told herself it was simply the proximity required by the situation. "Tell me about Valentine," she said, partly to distract herself. "What is the town like?" "Small but growing," Lucas said. "Got a main street with the usual, general store, saloon, hotel, telegraph office. There is a newspaper too, actually. The Valentine Reporter, run by a man named Henry Walsh. He might be interested in your work." Sophia perked up at this. "Really? That would be wonderful. I need to wire my editor in any case, let him know I am alive. I am sure he will be relieved, along with your family." "My mother will probably tell me I told you so," Sophia said ruefully. "She never wanted me to come west." "Cannot blame her for worrying," Lucas said. "The frontier is not always kind, especially to women traveling alone. Women live here, though, Sophia pointed out. They build lives, raise families, run businesses. I have read about women homesteading on their own, women doctors and teachers and entrepreneurs. If they can do it, why should I not be able to document it? Fair enough, Lucas conceded. Just be careful, Sophia. Good intentions do not stop bullets. I will be more careful, she promised. Though I am not sure how much more careful I could have been. The stage was supposed to be safe. Nothing is ever completely safe out here. That is just the reality. His arm tightened slightly around her waist, a protective gesture that sent warmth flooding through her. But for what it is worth, I am glad I found you when I did. So am I, Sophia said softly. They crested a rise, and suddenly buildings were visible in the distance. Valentine, Nebraska, spread out in a shallow valley, a collection of wooden structures that looked impossibly fragile against the vast landscape. But to Sophia, it looked like salvation. There she is, Lucas said. We will be there in less than an hour. Sophia felt an unexpected pang. She had spent less than a day with Lucas Steele, much of it in dire circumstances, yet she found herself reluctant for their time together to end. He was unlike anyone she had ever met. Capable, thoughtful, surprisingly easy to talk to. And if she was honest with herself, increasingly attractive in ways that had nothing to do with his physical appearance and everything to do with the kind of man he was. As they approached Valentine, Sophia could make out more details. The main street ran north to south, lined with false-fronted buildings that gave the town a sense of permanence it probably had not yet earned. There were people moving about, horses tied to hitching posts, a wagon being loaded outside the general store. Normal life, continuing as it always did, while she had been fighting for survival in the Badlands. Lucas guided them directly to a building with a sign reading Valentine Hotel and Boarding House. He dismounted first, then helped Sophia down. Her legs were unsteady after the long ride, and she gripped his arms for balance. "Steady," he said, his hands at her waist. "Give yourself a minute." They stood like that for a moment, close enough that Sophia could see the gold flecks in his brown eyes. Then Lucas stepped back, clearing his throat, and the spell broke. "Let me help you get settled," he said. "Then I need to report to the ranch, let them know where I have been." "Of course," Sophia said, trying to ignore the flutter of disappointment in her chest. The hotel was run by a stern-faced woman named Mrs. Patterson, who took one look at Sophia's disheveled state and clucked her tongue. "Good Lord, child, what happened to you?" Sophia gave her an abbreviated version of events while Lucas stood quietly by. Mrs. Patterson's expression shifted from disapproval to shock to sympathy in rapid succession. "Well, you are safe now," she said firmly. "I will get you a room and draw you a bath. You look like you could use both." "Thank you," Sophia said gratefully. "I also need to send a telegram and speak with the local newspaper editor. Telegraph office is 2 doors down. Henry Walsh usually is at the reporter office by 9 in the morning. It is just across the street." Mrs. Patterson handed Sophia a key. "Room 4, top of the stairs. I will have the bath ready in 20 minutes. Sophia turned to Lucas, suddenly at a loss for words. "How did you thank someone for saving your life?" "I do not know how to repay you," she said finally. "No need," Lucas said. "I am just glad you are safe." "Will I see you again?" The words came out before Sophia could stop them, more hopeful than she had intended. Lucas's expression softened. "I expect so. Valentine is not that big a town. Hard to avoid anyone for long. I would like that. To see you again, I mean. Perhaps I could interview you properly for my article, The Life of a Working Cowboy." He looked amused. "If you think that would make for interesting reading, sure." "Everything about the last day has been interesting," Sophia said. "You included." Was she imagining the faint color that rose in his cheeks? Before she could decide, Lucas tipped his hat to her. "Take care of yourself, Boston. Try not to get into any more trouble. I will do my best." She watched him leave, leading his horse down the street toward what she assumed was a stable. Only when he turned the corner and disappeared from sight did she realize she was still standing there staring after him. "He is a good man, that Lucas Steele," Mrs. Patterson said from behind her. "Quiet, keeps to himself mostly, but good-hearted. You could do worse for a rescuer." Sophia felt her face heat. "He was very kind and easy on the eyes," Mrs. Patterson said with a knowing look. "Now come on, let us get you cleaned up. You can moon over Cowboys after you have had a bath and some proper food." The bath was heaven, hot water and soap washing away days of dust and fear. Mrs. Patterson provided a simple dress to replace Sophia's ruined traveling outfit, and though it was a bit large and unfashionable, it was clean and whole. Sophia felt almost human again as she made her way to the telegraph office. The telegram to her editor was brief. "Stagecoach attacked. Safe in Valentine. Continuing work. Will write soon." She paid the fee and then headed across the street to the Valentine Reporter. The newspaper office was a single room crowded with a printing press, boxes of type, stacks of paper, and an overwhelming smell of ink. A man in his 50s looked up from a desk piled high with documents. "Help you?" he asked, his tone friendly but distracted. "Mr. Walsh. My name is Sophia Turner. I am a journalist from Boston, and I am writing a series of articles about the frontier. I was hoping I might speak with you about the area and perhaps submit some pieces for your paper." Henry Walsh's eyebrows rose. "A journalist from Boston? Well, that is not something you hear every day. Sit down, Miss Turner, and tell me what brings you to Valentine." Sophia sat and launched into her story. Henry listened with increasing interest, asking sharp questions and taking notes of his own. By the time she finished, he was grinning. "That is one hell of a story," he said. "Pardon my language. If you write it half as well as you tell it, I would be honored to publish it. And I can pay you for other pieces too if you are interested. Local stories, profiles, whatever you think would interest a wider audience." "Really?" Sophia could hardly believe her luck. "Really? Good writers are hard to find out here. Most folks with the education head east, not west. If you are willing to stay in Valentine for a while, we could make this work." Sophia thought of her original plan. 3 months traveling, gathering stories, then returning to Boston. But why rush back to a city that did not want her work when there was opportunity here? "I am willing," she said. They shook hands, and Henry pulled out a fresh notebook. "Let us start with what you have seen so far. Give me your impressions, the details nobody else would notice. That is what will make your work stand out." Sophia spent the next 2 hours talking and writing, filling pages with observations. Henry was an excellent editor, asking questions that pushed her to dig deeper, to find the emotional truth beneath the surface facts. By the time she emerged from the newspaper office, the sun was high and her head was buzzing with ideas. She spent the afternoon exploring Valentine, notebook in hand. She talked to shopkeepers and customers, to a schoolteacher taking her lunch break, to a group of ranch hands drinking at the saloon. Everyone had a story, and Sophia collected them eagerly. She photographed the main street, the church at the edge of town. A family posed in front of their wagon loaded with supplies. Through it all, she found her thoughts returning to Lucas. She wondered what he was doing, if he was thinking of her at all, if she would see him again soon. It was foolish, she told herself. She barely knew him. But something had happened in those hours they spent together, something that felt significant in ways she could not quite articulate. That evening, back at the hotel, Sophia sat at the small desk in her room and began writing. The words poured out of her. The terror of the attack, the stark beauty of the Badlands, the moment of hope when she saw a rider approaching. She wrote about Lucas, trying to capture his quiet competence, the way he had treated her with respect and kindness without making her feel helpless. She wrote until her hand cramped and her eyes burned, until the words finally slowed to a trickle and stopped. She read over what she had written, making notes for revision. It was raw and emotional, more personal than her usual style. But it was honest. It was true. And she thought it might be the best thing she had ever written. A knock at the door startled her from her thoughts. When she opened it, Mrs. Patterson stood there with a tray. "Brought you some dinner," she said. "You have been up here writing all evening. Figured you needed fuel." "Thank you," Sophia said, genuinely touched. "That is very kind. Also thought you might want to know there is a dance at the town hall on Saturday night," Mrs. Patterson said, a twinkle in her eye. "Whole town turns out for it. Good way to meet people if you are planning to stay a while." "I will keep that in mind," Sophia said. "Lucas Steele usually comes to the dances," Mrs. Patterson added, not bothering to hide her matchmaking intentions. "Just thought you might like to know." After she left, Sophia found herself smiling. A dance. She had not danced in years, had not had much occasion to in Boston, where her social circle was limited, and her mother's attempts at matchmaking had left her cold. But the thought of dancing with Lucas, of his hands on her waist, made her pulse quicken. She pushed the thought aside and focused on her dinner and her writing. But as she lay in bed that night, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of the frontier town settling into sleep, she allowed herself to imagine it. Lucas asking her to dance, the two of them moving together to music, his eyes on hers. It was a pleasant fantasy to drift off on. The next 3 days passed in a blur of activity. Sophia threw herself into her work, conducting interviews and writing articles. Henry published her account of the stagecoach attack, and it caused quite a stir in town. The sheriff came to interview her about what she had seen, and there was talk of forming a larger posse to track the bandits. She saw Lucas only once briefly when she was walking back to the hotel one evening. He was coming out of the general store, his arms full of supplies. "Sophia," he said, his face brightening. "How are you settling in?" "Very well," she said. "I have been working with Henry Walsh at the newspaper. He is publishing some of my work. I saw your article about the attack. It was good, made me feel like I was there." "You were there," Sophia said, smiling. "For the important part." Lucas shifted the supplies in his arms. "Listen, there is a dance on Saturday. I was wondering if maybe you would want to go. With me, I mean." Sophia's heart leapt. "I would love to." "Really?" He looked almost surprised. "All right then. I will pick you up at 7. 7 is perfect." He smiled at her, that rare, full smile that transformed his face, and Sophia felt warmth spread through her chest. They stood there for a moment, just looking at each other, until someone tried to get past them on the boardwalk and they both stepped aside, laughing. "I should get these supplies back to the ranch," Lucas said, "and I should get back to writing. Saturday then." "Saturday." Sophia watched him walk away, happiness bubbling up inside her. She felt like a character in one of the romance novels she secretly read as a girl, the kind her mother had deemed frivolous. But this was real life, her life, and it was more exciting than any novel. The next 2 days seemed to crawl by. Sophia worked, wrote, explored the town, but part of her mind was always on Saturday. She borrowed a dress from Mrs. Patterson, a blue cotton with lace at the collar that actually fit reasonably well. She practiced pinning her hair in different styles, feeling both excited and foolish. "You are smitten," Mrs. Patterson declared, watching her fuss over her appearance on Saturday afternoon. "I barely know him. Sophia protested. "Sometimes that is how it happens. My late husband, I knew within an hour of meeting him that he was the one. 23 years of marriage proved me right." She adjusted Sophia's hair gently. "There, you look beautiful. That cowboy will not know what hit him." When Lucas arrived at 7, Sophia was waiting in the hotel parlor. She stood as he entered and saw his eyes widen slightly. "You look wonderful," he said. "Thank you. So do you." And he did. He had cleaned up, his hair slicked back and his face freshly shaved. He wore a clean shirt and a leather vest, and there was something endearing about the obvious care he had taken with his appearance. He offered his arm, and Sophia took it. They walked together through the streets of Valentine as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. The town hall was already full of people, music spilling out into the evening air. A fiddle and a guitar player had set up in one corner, and couples were already whirling around the floor. "I should warn you," Lucas said as they entered. "I am not a great dancer." "Neither am I," Sophia admitted. "We will muddle through together." The evening unfolded like a dream. Lucas led her onto the floor, his hand at her waist, and they stumbled through a Virginia reel together, laughing when they missed steps. They danced again, a waltz this time, and Sophia found herself relaxing into the rhythm, into the feeling of being held by him. Between dances, Lucas introduced her to people. She met Robert Randall and his sons from the Double R Ranch, who teased Lucas good-naturedly about bringing the pretty journalist to the dance. She met other ranchers, shop owners, families who had homesteaded in the area. Everyone was friendly and curious, and Sophia found herself liking these people immensely. "What do you think of our little town?" Robert Randall asked during a break in the music. "I think it is remarkable," Sophia said honestly. "The resilience, the community spirit. People helping each other survive and thrive in a difficult place. It is exactly the kind of story I want to tell." "Just make sure you tell the truth," Robert said. "Good and bad. A lot of folks have tried to make the frontier sound like paradise to lure settlers west. It is not paradise. It is hard work and heartbreak along with the good times." "I will tell the truth," Sophia promised. "That is the only kind of story worth telling." Lucas smiled at her, and she felt that connection again, the sense that he understood her in ways few people did. As the evening grew later, they stepped outside for air. The night was cool, the stars brilliant overhead. They walked a little way from the hall, the music drifting after them. "Thank you for bringing me tonight," Sophia said. "I have had a wonderful time. So have I." Lucas was quiet for a moment, then said, "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." "What happens when your 3 months are up? Do you go back to Boston?" Sophia considered the question. A week ago she would have said yes without hesitation. But now, standing under the vast Nebraska sky with Lucas beside her, Boston felt like a place from another lifetime. "I do not know," she said honestly. "I agreed to stay and write for Henry at the newspaper, and there are so many stories here I have not even begun to tell. Maybe I will not go back. Maybe I will make a life here instead." "Would you want that, to stay?" "I think I might." She looked up at him. "Would you want me to stay?" Lucas turned to face her fully, his expression serious. "Yes, I know we have not known each other long, but yes, I would want you to stay." Her heart was beating so hard she was sure he could hear it. "Lucas, I have not been able to stop thinking about you," he said, the words coming in a rush. "Since I found you in the Badlands, you have been in my head. The way you looked at everything with such interest, the way you kept going even when you were exhausted and scared, the way you listen when people talk, like their stories really matter to you." "They do matter to me," Sophia said softly. "And you matter to me. I do not know how it happened so fast, but you do." Lucas reached up and cupped her face gently. "Can I kiss you, please?" Sophia breathed. He leaned in slowly, giving her time to change her mind, but she did not want to. When his lips met hers, it was soft and sweet and perfect. Sophia's eyes closed and she melted into the kiss, her hands coming up to rest on his chest. She could feel his heartbeat under her palm, as rapid as her own. When they finally broke apart, Lucas rested his forehead against hers. "I have wanted to do that since yesterday," he admitted. "Only yesterday," Sophia teased. "I have wanted it since the Badlands." He laughed, a sound of pure joy, and kissed her again. This time it was deeper, more urgent, and Sophia felt heat flooding through her. When they broke apart, both were breathing hard. "We should probably head back inside," Lucas said reluctantly. "Before people talk." "Let them talk," Sophia said recklessly, but she let him lead her back toward the town hall. They danced twice more before the evening ended, and this time when Lucas held her, there was a new awareness between them, a new intimacy. Sophia felt like she was floating, her earlier fatigue forgotten. When the final song ended and couples began drifting home, Lucas walked her back to the hotel. At the door, he kissed her once more, gentle and lingering. "Can I see you tomorrow?" he asked. "You had better," Sophia said. "I have an interview to conduct, remember, the life of a cowboy. How could I forget?" He smiled down at her. "Tomorrow, then, I will come by after church. I will be waiting." Sophia went inside in a daze, barely registering Mrs. Patterson's knowing smile. In her room, she sat at her desk but found she could not write. Her mind was too full, her emotions too chaotic. She was falling for Lucas Steele, falling hard and fast, and it was thrilling and terrifying in equal measure. She had come west to find stories. She had not expected to find her own story unfolding in the process. But here she was, in a frontier town in Nebraska, falling in love with a cowboy who had saved her life and seemed to genuinely see her for who she was. The next morning, Sophia attended church services in the small white chapel at the edge of town. She sat near the back, watching the congregation. These were hard-working people, their faces weathered by sun and wind, their clothes simple but clean. The preacher spoke about perseverance and faith, and Sophia found herself moved by the quiet devotion of the people around her. After the service, she stood outside talking with some of the women she had met. They were friendly, curious about her work, eager to share their own stories. One woman, Sarah, invited her to tea later in the week. "It would be nice to have another educated woman to talk to," Sarah said. "Not that I do not love my neighbors, but sometimes I miss conversations about books and ideas." "I would love that," Sophia said warmly. Then Lucas appeared, leading his horse, and Sophia felt her pulse quicken. He looked good in the morning light, his hair slightly mussed by the wind, his smile just for her. "Ready for that interview?" he asked. "Absolutely. Where should we go?" "I thought I could show you the Double R, give you a sense of what ranch life is really like." They rode out together, Sophia seated in front of Lucas again, their bodies fitted together in a way that felt natural now. The ride to the ranch took about 40 minutes, the landscape changing from the open plains around Valentine to more varied terrain with hills and scattered trees. The Double R sprawled across a valley, with a main house, several outbuildings, corrals full of horses, and pastures where cattle grazed. It was impressive in its scope and organization. Lucas showed her around, explaining the different aspects of the operation. She took notes and photographs, documenting everything. "Most people think cowboys spend all day riding around looking heroic," Lucas said, grinning. "Truth is, it is a lot of hard work. Mending fences, breaking horses, branding cattle, checking water sources. It is hot in summer, freezing in winter, and dirty year-round." "But you love it," Sophia observed. "I do," he admitted. "I like being outside, working with animals. I like the sense of accomplishment when you break a difficult horse or successfully drive cattle to market. And I like the men I work with. We look out for each other." She interviewed him properly, asking about his typical day, the challenges he faced, the rewards of the work. Lucas was articulate and thoughtful, and Sophia found herself getting a much clearer picture of what frontier life really entailed. She also interviewed some of the other ranch hands, getting different perspectives. Robert Randall invited them to stay for lunch, and Sophia found herself seated at a long table with the Randall family and several of the hands. The food was simple but plentiful, and the conversation was lively. She felt welcomed, included in a way that made her understand the strong sense of community these people had built. After lunch, Lucas took her riding through the ranch lands. They stopped on a hilltop overlooking the valley, and Sophia took photographs of the view. "It is beautiful here," she said. "So different from Boston, but beautiful in its own way." "You miss Boston?" Lucas asked. Sophia thought about it. "I miss some things. My mother, though we do not always see eye to eye, some of my friends, the libraries and museums. But I do not miss the restrictions, the way everyone wanted to tell me what I should and should not do. Here, I feel like I can breathe." "I know what you mean," Lucas said. "I grew up in Ohio, left when I was 18. My father wanted me to work in his dry goods store, spend my life behind a counter. But I needed to see what else was out there. Never regretted leaving, though I do wish things with my family had ended on better terms. You do not talk to them, not in years. My father was angry when I left. Said I was throwing away opportunities, being foolish. Maybe I was, but I would rather be a foolish man living the life I want than a respectable man living someone else's life." Sophia reached over and took his hand. "I understand that completely." They sat together in companionable silence, watching clouds drift across the blue expanse of sky. Sophia felt a contentment she had never experienced before, a sense of being exactly where she was supposed to be. Over the following weeks, Sophia settled into a routine in Valentine. She wrote articles for Henry, conducted interviews, took photographs. Her work was well received, and Henry encouraged her to be bold, to tackle difficult subjects. She wrote about a dispute between a rancher and homesteaders over water rights. She interviewed a Lakota woman who came to town to trade, writing about the devastating impact of reservation policies. She profiled the town doctor, the only one for 50 miles in any direction, who worked tirelessly to care for everyone regardless of their ability to pay. And through it all, Lucas was there. He came to town every chance he could, and they spent hours together. They went for walks, attended church socials, sat in the newspaper office while she wrote and he read. They talked about everything, their pasts, their dreams, their fears. Sophia learned about Lucas's time as a cavalry scout, the things he had seen that haunted him. Lucas learned about Sophia's father's death, how it had shaped her, driven her to pursue journalism as a way of honoring his memory. "He would be proud of you," Lucas said one evening as they sat on the hotel porch watching the sun set. "The work you are doing, the stories you are telling, it matters." "I hope so," Sophia said. "Sometimes I worry it is not enough. There is so much injustice, so much suffering. How can a few articles make a difference? They make people aware. They make them think. That is the first step toward change." Lucas squeezed her hand. "Do not underestimate the power of truth, Sophia. It is the most powerful weapon there is." 6 weeks after Lucas had found her in the Badlands, Sophia sat down to write to her mother. It was a long letter, explaining where she was and what she had been doing. She described Valentine, her work, the people she had met, and she told her mother about Lucas. "I know this will worry you," she wrote. "You will think I am being reckless again, falling for a cowboy I have only known a short time. But, Mother, I have never been more certain of anything in my life. Lucas is good and kind and honest. He supports my work and does not try to change me. He makes me laugh and he makes me think. And I love him. I know it is fast, but I love him. I am going to stay in Valentine. I am going to make a life here. I hope you can understand and support my choice, but even if you cannot, I have to follow my heart this time. She sealed the letter and took it to the post office, feeling both liberated and anxious. Her mother's response, when it came, would either be understanding or devastating. But Sophia could not keep living her life trying to meet someone else's expectations. That same day, Lucas rode into town with news. He found Sophia at the newspaper office and asked if they could talk privately. They walked to a quiet spot by the creek that ran along the edge of town. "The sheriff caught the bandits," Lucas said. "The ones who attacked your stage. There was a shootout yesterday. 3 of them are dead, 2 are in custody." Sophia let out a breath she had not realized she was holding. "That is good news. Maybe the routes will be safer now." "There is more," Lucas said. "One of the ones they caught started talking. Turns out they were not just random bandits. They were being paid to target specific stages, disrupt mail delivery, scare off settlers. Someone has been trying to destabilize the area, drive down land values so they can buy up property cheap." "Who?" Sophia asked, her journalist instincts immediately engaged. "They are still investigating. But Sophia, this is the kind of story you wanted to tell. The corruption, the people being hurt by greed, you should write about this." "I will," Sophia said. "Thank you for telling me." Lucas pulled her close, wrapping his arms around her. "Just promise me you will be careful. If there are powerful people behind this, they will not like being exposed." "I promise," Sophia said, leaning into his embrace. "I have too much to live for now. I am not taking unnecessary risks." She spent the next week investigating and writing, following leads and interviewing people. The story that emerged was explosive. A land speculator from back east had hired the bandits to create chaos, hoping to drive people out so he could buy land cheap and resell it at a profit later. Several local officials had been bribed to look the other way. When Henry published the series of articles, it caused an uproar. There were calls for investigations, for justice. The land speculator was arrested, and 2 county officials resigned in disgrace. Sophia received threatening letters, but she also received letters of thanks from families who had almost lost everything. The story was picked up by larger papers, reprinted in newspapers across the country. The independent press wrote to offer her a permanent position as a Western correspondent, sending her stories regularly but allowing her to stay in Nebraska. "You did it," Lucas said, his pride evident. "You made a real difference." "We did it," Sophia corrected. "You told me about the bandits. And you believed I could write something that mattered." "I always believed in you," Lucas said. Then he took a deep breath. "Sophia, there is something I need to ask you." Sophia's heart began to race. They were standing on the same hilltop where they had sat weeks ago, overlooking the Double R Ranch. The sun was setting, painting everything gold. Lucas took her hands in his. "I know we have not known each other long, and I know you came out here for your career, not for romance. But I love you, Sophia. I love your intelligence and your passion and your courage. I love the way you see the world and the way you tell stories. I love talking to you and being with you and just knowing you exist." Tears pricked at Sophia's eyes. "Lucas, I do not have much to offer," he continued. "I am a working cowboy. I have saved some money, but I am not wealthy. I cannot give you the comfortable life you might have had back east, but I can promise to support your work, to be your partner in every way, to love you for the rest of my life. Sophia Turner, will you marry me?" Sophia felt joy bubbling up inside her, so intense it was almost painful. "Yes," she said. "Yes, of course yes." Lucas let out a whoop of happiness and swept her into his arms, spinning her around. When he set her down, he kissed her, and Sophia kissed him back with all the love and happiness she felt. When they finally broke apart, both were laughing and crying at the same time. "I love you," Sophia said. "You are the story of my lifetime, Lucas Steele. Everything else I write will just be extra." "I love you too, Boston," he said, and kissed her again. They were married 3 weeks later in the little white chapel in Valentine. It was a simple ceremony, but the church was packed with people who had become friends. Henry Walsh and his wife, Mrs. Patterson, Robert Randall and his family, ranch hands and shopkeepers and homesteaders. Sophia wore a dress that Mrs. Patterson and some of the other women had helped her make, a beautiful cream silk that they had ordered special from Omaha. Lucas wore a new suit that he was clearly uncomfortable in, but he looked so handsome that Sophia could barely breathe. To Sophia's surprise and delight, her mother came. She had written that she could not miss her only daughter's wedding, even if it was to a cowboy in the middle of nowhere. She arrived 2 days before the ceremony, and though she was clearly overwhelmed by Valentine, she made an effort to be gracious. "He seems like a good man," she said to Sophia the night before the wedding. "And you are happier than I have ever seen you. I suppose that is what matters most." "He is a good man, Mother, the best I have ever known." Her mother sighed. "I wanted an easier life for you, but I am beginning to understand that easy is not what you need. You need purpose and challenge and room to grow. If you have found that here, then I am happy for you." It was the closest thing to a blessing Sophia was likely to get, and she hugged her mother tightly, grateful for even that much acceptance. The ceremony itself was beautiful. Sophia walked down the aisle, her mother on one side and Henry Walsh on the other, standing in for her late father. Lucas stood at the front, his eyes locked on hers, and Sophia felt like the luckiest woman alive. They exchanged vows, promising to love and support each other through whatever came. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, the congregation erupted in cheers. The reception was held in the town hall, with food contributed by dozens of families and music provided by anyone who could play an instrument. Sophia and Lucas danced together, laughing and talking with everyone who came to congratulate them. It was a perfect celebration, full of warmth and joy. As the evening wound down and they prepared to leave for the small house Lucas had rented for them on the edge of town, Sophia pulled him aside. "Thank you," she said. "For what? For finding me in the Badlands, for believing in me, for loving me exactly as I am." Lucas cupped her face gently. "I should be thanking you. You brought light and purpose into my life. I am the lucky one, Sophia." "We are both lucky," she said, and kissed him. They moved into their house, a modest 2-room structure that was nevertheless their own space. Sophia set up a desk by the window where she could write, and Lucas built shelves for her books and notebooks. They fell into a rhythm, Lucas working at the ranch during the day while Sophia wrote and conducted interviews. In the evenings, they cooked together, talked about their days, made plans for the future. Sophia continued her work, her articles garnering more and more attention. She documented the building of a new schoolhouse, the arrival of a group of Swedish immigrants, a harsh winter that tested everyone's endurance. She wrote with empathy and honesty, telling stories that needed to be told. Lucas was promoted to foreman at the Double R Ranch, a position of responsibility that came with better pay. He took pride in his work, and Sophia loved seeing him come home each evening, tired but satisfied. They talked about saving money to eventually buy their own small piece of land, maybe running some cattle of their own. 8 months into their marriage, Sophia realized she was pregnant. She told Lucas over dinner one evening, watching his face carefully. She knew they had not really discussed children, had been focused on building their careers and their life together. But Lucas's face lit up with pure joy. "Are you serious? We are going to have a baby." "We are," Sophia said, smiling. "How do you feel about that?" "I feel like I am the luckiest man alive," he said, coming around the table to pull her into his arms. "Are you happy about it?" "I am," Sophia said, surprised by how true it was. "I was not sure I wanted children, but now that it is happening, I am thrilled, terrified but thrilled." "We will figure it out together," Lucas promised. "Everything we do together." The pregnancy progressed smoothly, and Sophia continued working as long as she could, only stopping when she was too large to comfortably ride to interviews. Even then, she wrote from home, documenting her experience of pregnancy on the frontier, the women who helped her, the challenges and joys of bringing new life into this harsh land. Their son was born on a spring morning in 1880, with Mrs. Patterson and the local midwife in attendance. It was long and difficult, and there were moments when Sophia thought she could not do it. But Lucas stayed with her, holding her hand and encouraging her, and finally the baby was born, healthy and screaming. "He is perfect," Lucas said, tears streaming down his face as he held his son for the first time. "Sophia, he is perfect." They named him James Robert after Sophia's father and Robert Randall, who had become like a father to Lucas. Little James was a good baby, curious and alert, and Sophia fell in love with him instantly. She documented his early days with photographs and written observations, amazed by how much love she felt for this tiny person. Being a mother while also being a working journalist was challenging, but Sophia was determined to do both. She learned to write while James napped, to conduct interviews with him strapped to her chest in a sling one of the ranch wives had made. Lucas was a devoted father, taking James whenever he was home, singing to him and walking him when he fussed. "You are amazing," Lucas told her one evening, watching her write an article while simultaneously rocking James's cradle with her foot. "I do not know how you do it all." "I have help," Sophia said, smiling at him. "I could not do any of this without you." "We make a good team," Lucas agreed. The years passed, busy and full. Sophia's reputation as a journalist grew. Her articles were reprinted in major newspapers, and she published a book collecting her frontier stories that sold surprisingly well. She used the money to buy a better camera and to help fund a new school in Valentine. Lucas saved enough money to buy a small ranch of their own, 50 acres with good water and grazing land. He continued to work for the Double R, but he also began building their herd, a few cattle at a time. It was hard work, but satisfying, creating something that was theirs. When James was 3, Sophia discovered she was pregnant again. This time, the pregnancy was harder. She was older, more tired from juggling work and motherhood. But their daughter, Catherine Ann, was born healthy and strong, with her father's dark eyes and her mother's determination. "2 children," Lucas said, holding Catherine while James tugged at his pant leg, demanding attention. "We are officially outnumbered." "But happily so," Sophia said. She cut back on her travel for interviews, focusing more on writing from home and covering local stories. She did not regret it. She loved her children fiercely, loved watching them grow and discover the world. And there were still stories everywhere, even in the small moments of daily life. Valentine grew and changed around them. The railroad came through, bringing new settlers and new opportunities. The town got electricity, a telegraph office that became a telephone exchange. Sophia documented all of it, chronicling the transformation of the frontier into something more settled and civilized. But some things stayed the same. The land was still harsh and beautiful. The sky was still vast and full of stars. And the community that had welcomed her all those years ago remained strong, people helping each other through droughts and hard winters and personal tragedies. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Lucas took Sophia back to the spot where they had first camped, in the Badlands where he had found her. They left the children with Mrs. Patterson, who was now like a grandmother to James and Catherine. "I cannot believe it has been 10 years, Sophia said, looking out at the familiar landscape. "Best 10 years of my life," Lucas said, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "Mine too," Sophia said. "Sometimes I think about that day, how terrified I was. I had no idea that getting lost would be the best thing that ever happened to me." "You were never lost," Lucas said. "You were finding your way to me." Sophia turned in his arms to face him. "I love you, Lucas Steele. You gave me everything I needed, a home, a family, and the freedom to be myself." "I love you, Sophia. You are still the best story I know." They camped there that night, under the stars, talking and laughing and reminiscing. And in the morning they rode back to Valentine, back to their children and their work and their life together. Years continued to pass. James grew into a serious, thoughtful boy who loved books and learning. Catherine was adventurous and fearless, always climbing trees and exploring. Sophia watched them with pride and wonder, amazed that she and Lucas had created these remarkable people. Lucas's ranch prospered, growing larger as they were able to buy more land. He was respected in the community, known for his fairness and his skill with horses. Sophia's work continued to be published, and she mentored younger journalists who came west seeking their own stories. She started a writing group in Valentine, encouraging local people to document their experiences. When Sophia was 40, she received a letter from a major publishing house in New York. They wanted to publish a comprehensive history of the frontier, told through her articles and photographs and personal narrative. It would be a significant undertaking, but one that excited her immensely. "What do you think?" she asked Lucas, showing him the letter. "I think you should do it," he said immediately. "This is important work, Sophia. Your stories matter. They need to be preserved." So she took on the project, spending 2 years compiling, writing, and editing. The book, titled Letters from the Frontier, A Woman's Journey West, was published in 1895 to critical acclaim. Sophia did a small speaking tour, traveling to Boston, New York, and Chicago to give talks about her experiences. Her mother, now elderly, came to the Boston event. Afterward, she hugged Sophia tightly. "I was wrong," she said. "Wrong to try to keep you here, wrong to think you were foolish for going west. You have done remarkable things, Sophia. Your father would be so proud." "Thank you, Mother," Sophia said, her eyes filling with tears. "That means more to me than you know." But as much as she enjoyed the recognition and the opportunity to share her work, Sophia was relieved to return home to Nebraska. Boston felt foreign now, too crowded and noisy. She missed the open sky, the sound of wind through the grass, the quiet rhythms of ranch life. Most of all, she missed Lucas. They had been apart for nearly 2 months, the longest separation of their marriage. When she got off the train in Valentine, he was waiting on the platform, gray showing in his hair now, but his smile just as warm as the first time she had seen it. "Welcome home, Boston," he said, pulling her into his arms. "It is good to be home," she said, and meant it with her whole heart. James left for university in Lincoln when he was 18, wanting to study law. It was hard to let him go, but Sophia understood his need to find his own path. Catherine showed no interest in leaving, declaring she wanted to be a rancher like her father. She had a natural way with horses and cattle, and Lucas began teaching her everything he knew. "She is better at this than I ever was," Lucas told Sophia one evening, watching Catherine expertly cut a calf from the herd. "She learned from the best," Sophia said, squeezing his hand. They were growing older, both of them, but Sophia felt they were aging well. Lucas still rose early and worked hard, though he delegated more to the ranch hands now. Sophia still wrote, though her focus had shifted more to memoir and reflection. They talked about eventually passing the ranch to Catherine, about maybe traveling a bit, seeing parts of the country they had never visited. On a summer evening in 1898, they sat on the porch of their ranch house, watching the sun set over the land they had built together. Sophia leaned against Lucas, his arm around her shoulders, feeling perfectly content. "You ever regret it?" Lucas asked. "Coming west, giving up the life you might have had back east?" "Not for a single moment," Sophia said. "This is the life I was meant to live." "You are the man I was meant to love. I would not change anything." "Even the stagecoach attack," Lucas teased. "Especially the stagecoach attack," Sophia said. "It brought me to you." Lucas kissed the top of her head. "I still think about that day sometimes. Finding you out there, so determined and brave. I knew right then that you were going to change my life." "We changed each other's lives," Sophia said. "That is what love does." They sat in comfortable silence, watching stars appear one by one in the darkening sky. Around them, the sounds of the ranch settling for the night. Cattle lowing, horses moving in their pasture, crickets beginning their evening song. It was a symphony Sophia had grown to love, the soundtrack of her life. "Tell me again," Lucas said, "the part about me being the story of your lifetime." Sophia laughed. "Still fishing for compliments after 20 years of marriage, always," Lucas said, grinning. Sophia turned to look at him, this man who had saved her, loved her, supported her through everything. "You are the story of my lifetime, Lucas Steele," she said seriously. "Every word I have written, every photograph I have taken, every success I have had, it all means more because I have shared it with you. You are my greatest adventure, my truest love, my home." Lucas pulled her close and kissed her, and Sophia felt the same spark she had felt that first time, all those years ago. Some things, she thought, never changed. The depth of love, the strength of commitment, the joy of being with someone who truly saw you and loved you anyway. They went inside eventually, the evening chill driving them to the warmth of their home. Sophia sat at her desk and opened her journal, the one she had kept faithfully since that first day in the Badlands. She wrote about the sunset, about Lucas, about the sense of gratitude that filled her heart. She wrote about their children, thriving and finding their own ways. She wrote about the community they were part of, the land they had helped settle, the stories she had told and would continue to tell. When she finished, she closed the journal and joined Lucas in their bedroom. He was already in bed, reading by lamplight. He looked up and smiled when she entered, setting his book aside and holding out his hand. Sophia took it, climbing into bed beside him, fitting herself against his familiar warmth. "I love you," she said. "I love you too," Lucas replied. "Always have, always will." They fell asleep like that, hands intertwined, hearts beating in steady rhythm. Outside, the Nebraska night settled over the land, vast and star-filled and full of promise. The story that had begun with a bullet through a stagecoach window had become a love story, a life story, a testament to the power of courage and hope, and two people finding each other against all odds. Sophia had come west looking for stories to tell, and she had found the greatest story of all. Her own happily ever after, lived one day at a time, one moment at a time, with the man she loved by her side. And that, she thought as sleep claimed her, was exactly how a story should end. Not with a period, but with the knowledge that life continued, that love endured, that every ending was also a beginning. The frontier had given her everything she had dreamed of and more. It had given her purpose, community, family, and love. It had given her a life worth living and stories worth telling. In the years that followed, Sophia would write many more articles and several more books. She would become known as one of the definitive voices documenting the American frontier, her work studied and celebrated. Lucas would expand the ranch, becoming one of the most successful ranchers in the region, known for his integrity and his innovative approaches to land management. James would return from university to practice law in Valentine, eventually becoming a judge known for his fairness and wisdom. Catherine would take over the ranch from Lucas and turn it into one of the finest operations in Nebraska, earning respect in a field dominated by men through sheer skill and determination. But none of those future accomplishments mattered as much as the simple fact of Sophia and Lucas's love. They had found each other in the Badlands, two souls destined to meet, and they had built a life together that was rich in every way that mattered. They had loved and been loved, had raised good children, had made a difference in their community, had left the world better than they found it. When Lucas passed away peacefully in his sleep at the age of 72, Sophia held his hand and whispered that he had been her greatest adventure. And when Sophia followed him 6 years later, surrounded by children and grandchildren, her last thoughts were of gratitude for the stagecoach attack that had stranded her in the Badlands, for the cowboy who had found her there, for the life they had shared. Her journals and photographs were donated to the Nebraska State Historical Society, where they remain to this day, a record of frontier life and a testament to one woman's determination to tell true stories. And at the heart of all those journals, woven through every entry, is the story of a love that began with a rescue and lasted a lifetime. The small gravestone in the Valentine Cemetery reads simply, Sophia Turner Steele, 1853–1927, journalist, author, beloved wife and mother. She told the stories that needed telling. Next to it is Lucas's stone, Lucas Steele, 1852–1920, rancher, husband, father, a man of honor and heart. But those who knew them, and those who read Sophia's work, understand that no stone could truly capture what they meant to each other and to the community they helped build. Their legacy lives on in the town of Valentine, in the stories Sophia told, in the land Lucas loved, and in the family they created together. It was, in every way, a love story for the ages, a tale of courage, determination, and two people who found in each other exactly what they needed. From the moment Lucas found Sophia lost in the Badlands to their final days together, theirs was a partnership built on respect, strengthened by adversity, and sustained by genuine love. And if you were to ask Sophia, in those final years when she sat on her porch watching the sunset over the land she and Lucas had made their home, she would tell you without hesitation. Every moment, every challenge, every triumph and every trial had been worth it. Because she had lived a life of purpose with the man she loved, and what more could anyone ask for than that? The story of the cowboy who guided the lost journalist through the Badlands became part of Valentine's folklore, told and retold, a reminder that sometimes the worst moments of our lives lead us to the best things. And in Sophia's own words, written in her final journal entry, I came west looking for stories, but I found so much more. I found home. I found purpose. I found love. And I found that sometimes the greatest story we tell is the one we live.